Hi everyone, this is Zachary versus Emily. Played on the 20th of October 2018. Let's get into it. E4, E5. Four knights game. Bishop C4. Okay, this is the first thing I got to mention. It's very dangerous playing Bishop C4 because there's a well-known trick, I call it the fork trick, where this knight can sacrifice itself for the pawn, and if the knight takes back, you then pawn fork the two pieces. So as you can see from the starting position, this bishop and this pawn are separated by one square, and by sacrificing the knight, you end up with two pieces separated by one square. And the idea is, if the bishop were to drop back here to defend the knight and takes, you end up in a position where black has got the only pawn left in the center of the board. Now it's not so clear cut. White is threatening to just take the knight and then grab the pawn back, which is a bit annoying. But something like Bishop D6 is fine, and Black should be quite happy and comfortable with this position. So that's called the fork trick. There's a few more things to it, like after sacrificing the knight, for instance, Black could immediately sacrifice the bishop to expose his king, and then grab the knight back again, leaving equal material. However, this is really good for Black, because Black ends up with a big center. And even though this knight can jump here and throw a check in, there's no actual way to get to this king. As you can see, there's no sneaky trick or anything. We could try a different move order, like this knight moves here, and if the king goes here, queen f3, threatening mates down here, but they're very easily stopped. You can just throw your queen on e7 or d7 and or even e8 and just defend that square. So yeah, the best thing for Black to do after this particular fork trick is to just take it, because at least that way you end up taking one of Black's center pawns, and then you can do something like takes here and leave Black with an isolated pawn and doubled isolated pawns. But yeah, Black still has the center, and Black has two bishops as well to go with it. And Black should be very happy with this position, as Black usually you're groveling a lot, just trying to hang in there for dear life as White puts you under pressure, and Black really isn't under any pressure here. Okay, let's go back. You don't have to do the fork trick. I just think it's the best way for Black to play this to eliminate all White's pressure. Bishop c5 was played. Now keep in mind here, White does not have the equivalent fork trick because the bishop's on c4. So after d4, the knight can just take the bishop. Okay, so that means bishop c5 is perfectly fine as an answer to bishop c4. In the four knights game, in order to avoid that fork trick, usually bishop b5 is the move, and there is a danger, like if this bishop goes here, then if you look at this particular fork trick here, it actually works because the bishop isn't in danger from the knight on c4 anymore. And so basically the answer to bishop b5 is this, and the four knights game usually goes something along these lines like this, with a symmetrical position, fairly level. White's got the move, therefore White has the advantage. Okay, so bishop c4, I think, is something that White needs to make sure he's careful to avoid in future. Bishop c5 is fine. Now knight g5, I consider this a wasted move, because you're basically forcing Black to play a move they want to play anyway, and all you've done is you've just moved the same piece twice in the opening. So it's a wasted move that could be spent, getting this bishop out or getting the king to safety, for instance. Instead of playing that, castles is also good. So yeah, you got to be careful. Like this knight g5 idea, it's actually quite annoying if this bishop is still here. Like if Black were to play d3 here, that would be a terrible blunder, because then knight g5 is awesome. He can't defend this pawn at all. He has to waste another move playing d5, and that pretty much sacrifices the pawn. But because the bishop has come out, knight g5 just wastes the move because the king can just castle instantly. Okay, so now Black black has got the better position for sure because of that one wasted move, and black is just developing. It says knight d4 here. You could do that sort of stuff. I really think just playing d6 and playing normally is great. King h1. Now with king h1, you're unpinning this pawn, which means the pawn is ready to charge up the board and release this rook. That's the usual idea behind it. The problem is, well, what if your opponent just plays h6? And the knight has to go back, and now moving this king was another wasted move because the knight is in the way of the pawn. The pawn can't push to f4 anymore. Now, black didn't play that. Black played queen e8. I'm not sure of this move. I'm not sure what black was thinking here. I'd like to know what the idea behind this move is. I mean, if the idea was eventually this pawn is going to charge up the board and this queen is going to swing out, then yeah, this sort of thing can be good. But in this position, it's going to take a long time before this pawn can move up. The king has to move, the knight has to move, then the pawn can move up, then the queen can finally come out. I really just think that developing this bishop might be just a better way to play. Something like just bishop d7, for instance, is perfectly fine. Playing knight d4 now, I think, is also quite good because it releases the c pawn, so you can play something like c6 with the idea of going for the plan of d5, and then this queen can swing out to b6, which is even stronger now with this king moved, and there's no defenders here. You got to be careful of the queen coming out though, because of moves like knight a4, and you end up losing your bishop. But yeah, knight d4 is the move I think is best. The idea is c6 and then trying to get the pawn break with d5 in. Also, just simply playing a move like h6 is quite good. If you just chase the knight away, for instance, the knight goes back, you can then develop the bishop to g4 and then threaten to jump this knight into here and muck up white's pawn structure. So there's two really good ways to play this. h6 followed by bishop g4, pinning the knight, or just simply knight d4. And the threat, the idea is to play c6. You're also threatening to go h6, kick the knight back, and then instantly pin it. So it's really good, this knight d4. It means you can do both plans well, quite nicely. Okay, the move played queen e8. I'm not sure why. Yeah, it's a bit puzzling. It's a move which doesn't seem to have a clear plan attached to it. And you have to make sure that when you do make your moves that there is some sort of plan involved. Don't just move pieces around without a plan. Okay, d3 was played here. Bishop d7, this is good, developing. No, okay, the knight's just voluntarily, I mean, maybe the knight should just stayed there. In fact, what's wrong with f4 here? I like this idea, f4. You've cleared the king out of the way of the pin, and now you can actually f4, get this plan going. And if the knight gets chased away, it's got a lovely home on f3. And then from f3, it and the pawn both put pressure on e5. f4 I really like, and you also got the option of taking at some point and releasing your rook. And of course, you're hoping they'll take you because it develops your bishop for you and gives you a half-open file for the rook. So f4 looks great here. Knight f3, I think, yeah, the knight was a wasted move sending it up here, and another wasted move coming back. That's two wasted moves. Whereas I think black's only played the one move which is kind of wasted, which is putting the queen on e8. So now the bishop's gone to e6. I think the idea was because the knight is no longer on g5, this bishop can challenge this bishop. I think that's okay. I don't like the idea that you move the bishop, then move the bishop again. It feels like a wasted move, but considering white wasted a move and took a piece off the defense of that square, it actually makes perfect sense. And I mean, and from here you can see the queen placed on e8 is actually good. So maybe going back, maybe that was the whole idea of queen e8. I didn't understand the move at the time, but I'm beginning to understand it now. It gives an extra defender to e6. So maybe black's plan was to just kick the knight away and then challenge the bishop, in which case, well done. Queen e8, it's a decent plan. I have to congratulate black on that. It's quite clever. didn't occur to me that that was the idea, to just try and challenge these white pieces by controlling e6. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, bishop e6, bishop g5. Letting these get swapped off. White just swapped them. So white now has double pawns. Sorry, black swapped them. White now has double pawns, but white has a half-open d file to work with, and this knight could be very annoying sitting in this square here. One of the things that could happen here, though, is yeah, black has to deal with the fact that this knight is being attacked. Black does not want the bishop taking the knight and having her pawn structure on the king side destroyed. So she played queen e6 defending the knight, and also attacks this c-pawn. So actually, yeah, that's really good. Knight b5 was played now, threatening the c7 pawn. That's a pain. On the other hand, this pawn here has been left undefended. Well, I'm not sure if taking it straight away is a good idea. Actually, it might be, because the knight's going to jump into here. This is some weird stuff, actually. You know, like knight in here, just giving up the pawn, then the queen goes back, attacking the knight, and then while the knight's grabbing the rook, this knight jumps into here. And the idea is after rook takes, bishop takes, this knight is trapped. And you end up getting your piece back. What's the material? And yeah, black is winning. So knight takes e4 is actually looking pretty good at the moment. It's a weird counterintuitive move. My first instinct was, oh, my pawn's under attack, I better defend it. And a move like, you know, rook c8 defending the pawn comes to mind. Or, you know, maybe knight e8 is an idea. I mean, normally a move like this is terrible, but in this case, it gets the knight out of the range of the bishop so that this queen is now free to wander without having to worry about your pawn structure on your king side getting messed up. And the knight also defends the pawn. And if your plan is to play f5, then you actually want this rook on this square. So putting the knight here is not bad at all. So yeah, lots of options here. What did black choose? Black chose queen e7, just defending the pawn, but it runs into a pin. And one of the problems is the queen is overworked. The queen's trying to defend the c-pawn and the knight at the same time. So white did very well here. That's good job by Zachary. He played bishop takes knight and takes advantage of the overworked queen. So if black doesn't want to lose a pawn, black has to mess up the kingside pawns, which allows like knight to jump out to here and then jump into this hole here with the idea of the queen swinging out here and trying to mate down in here. So rather than face that massive attack, black just chose to take back with the queen and give up this pawn. I think actually it's a very clever choice. I think taking with this pawn here is way too risky. Yeah, this is just terrifying. Like, you know, let's say this knight gets attacked, you can just ignore it and play this, and this is just winning for white. If the queen moves out of danger from the knight, then just queen g4, king here, mate. So yeah, given how strong and powerful this attack is, I think Emily made a really good decision here and just went, okay, have the pawn. I don't want to get my king checkmated. Okay, knight takes c7. Yeah, so the mistake there was moving the queen back to e7, whereas knight to e8 was the best move. It's a hard move to find because you don't really consider moving your knight back like that, particularly if it's disconnecting your rooks from each other. But in this case, it is actually the best move. Okay, so bishop takes, queen takes, knight takes. Okay, the rooks come across here. So in compensation for the lost pawn, this rook now has a half-open file, hitting two double pawns. So there's definite compensation for black here. The knight's jumped into d5. Now the queen needs to find a safe square to go to, and this is tricky. Does it wander out on the king side here somewhere? Or does it jump back home where it can pop out to this side? It's tricky. Or does it just stay centralized? But then it's vulnerable to being attacked by the knight. I think queen d8 was not a bad idea. Okay, queen c1 was played. I think it looks like white is trying to play queen here to swap the queens off. I mean, once you've won a pawn, swapping all the pieces off is a good policy. You can get yourself to a pawn up endgame. You can win. Also, it frees up the d1 square, which allows the rook to swing to d1 and attack this backward d pawn that's been created when this pawn was lost. So it's not a bad idea, actually. I don't mind it. I think trying to get the queen to come along this diagonal, though, I think maybe it's a bit ambitious, and I think instead just queen e2 might be a bit better, which just keeps this pawn here defended. It means you don't have to wreck your dark squares by playing b3 to defend the pawn. Same idea, get the rooks onto the d file, but I think queen here is a better spot. Okay, so queen c1, rook b8. Why did the rook go to b8? Trying to work out what black was thinking here. I mean, it looks like a move like b5 is the idea. And once these pawns swap off, this rook will have a half-open b file. I guess, you know, it's not too bad. I'm wondering if playing a move like f5 might be possible, or is that just really bad? It's probably too dangerous because knight here threatens the knight fork. But that's what I'd be looking at. This rook's already got a nice line. I'd be trying to find a nice line for this rook as well. Okay, rook b8 was played, b4 was played, b4. That just throws the pawn away. No, white's just a clear pawn up in this position. And this move gives it back. But it's not just giving a pawn back. It's also, once this pawn disappears off the board, white will have doubled isolated pawns on the c-file. So it's not just throwing a pawn away, it's also wrecking your pawn structure at the same time. So black played bishop takes, pawn, and now, yeah, white's got doubled isolated c-pawns and an isolated a-pawn, and is no longer material up. So that's a huge blunder, pawn to b4. Yeah, massive mistake, which not only throws the pawn away, but throws the position away as well. Now it's going to be difficult. Okay, rook b1 was played, then the bishop dropped back to c5. And now the knight jumped to g5. I'm not sure what the knight's doing there. Yeah, it's not actually threatening anything. It just seems like the only useful reason I can see for playing this move is to free up the f pawn, so you can play f4 and get your rook into on a half open file and get that aggressive. Yeah, maybe it's okay. Okay, the queen's popped out the other side. I'm not sure I want the queen to pop out the other side. Maybe we can start harassing this pawn here. You know, it's a knight a5. How is this pawn even defended? I can't see how white can defend the pawn. White just has to basically accept the fact the pawn is lost and play something like f4 and get this attack going on the king side. So knight a5 I think wins a pawn. Instead queen a5 was played. Black then, I think black's trying to steal this pawn down here. But it leaves the queen in the corner and kind of out of play. And according to the engine, knight f6 is a move. Look at that. After pawn takes, rook b3. Wow, what is this? This is crazy. All right, the basic idea is the pawn can't take the knight because the queen takes check, king goes here, queen there, check, king goes there, and then checkmate. So rook b3, and I guess the idea is to try and swing the rook over to here afterwards. So let's say the queen were to like steal a pawn or something. Oh, the engine's suggesting, well, the engine likes rook b3 and rook g3 and thinks that's really, really good for white. But it actually is suggesting this. Look at that. What a move. If the king takes the knight, rook h3 check, the king has to move, and then the queen just drops into h6, and it's unstoppable mate. Next move, you've got either rook g3, ooh, rook g3 mate, or queen h8 mate, or queen h7 mate. There's no way on earth black can stop all that. Wow, what a tactic. I didn't notice that until I saw the engine started suggesting it, and I thought, what? Knight f6 check. And of course, if the king moves, then the knight just takes his pawn here. Quite extraordinary. And then yeah, the rook lift with the rook swinging across along here. Amazing. Okay, let's see what actually happened. Rook b5. Okay, so rook b5. The queen went and nabbed this pawn here, and now knight f6 is still it's about equal with the idea of rook b3. But that wasn't played. Knight c3 was played, attacking the queen, but that just throws away the c pawn, unfortunately. And that's pretty much the end of White's play. White was trying to do some tricky stuff to this queen, but unfortunately didn't have everything defended. You got to be very careful if you're playing a line that involves trying to trap the queen. You got to be very careful to make sure you have everything defended, because queens can slip out very easily. Okay, rook b3 was played, and then knight a5. Great stuff by black. I like this. Where's that rook going? I mean, this is a case of the queen's attacking the knight. The rook is the only thing defending it. Let's just get rid of the rook. And if the rook moves away, you lose the knight. If the rook stays there, you lose the exchange. Good tactics. Great stuff. So queen d1 was played. It looks like white has seen all this and thought, oh, I'm actually losing that rook. I'm losing something. I can't stop it. So I might as well get my queen in position to swing along this diagonal and try and set up mates. Well, at the moment, you can't actually swing your queen out there, because this rook here would be in danger. So another move needs to be wasted, like rook here or something, just so the queen has the freedom to charge off. Black decided not to have any say in that. It's actually very clever play. There's no rush to take this rook, so let's just get rid of any sort of checkmates against my king. This knight tried to charge out here, but I think this loses a lot of material. The queen could just take it, and this knight is still en prise, and the rook is en prise. Black didn't take that. Black took the rook instead, which is still good for black, absolutely, but you don't win as much material anymore. After the pawn takes back, it's now defending the knight, and because the queen's in danger, white will have the time to save this knight here. So the queen moved to d4, and then the queen jumped out to h5. Doesn't this knight have to just run for it, or maybe swap off for this bishop first, and then run for it? I think that's the idea. That's the best way to play here. Probably knight f3 straight away is the best thing, but the queens are going to get swapped off. Instead, white decided, no, if I let these queens get swapped off, I have no chance of winning. So I think what he gave him the best practical chances. He gave up the knight to keep his queen on the board, knowing that he might be able to use that queen with maybe this rook and do something to this king, maybe get a perpetual check or a sneaky checkmate. Black now played b5. I'm just looking at the engine for a second. I think taking that is perfectly fine, to be honest. Black is running out of pieces rapidly. This king is going to be safe. b5 is not as strong because it allows this knight to trade for the bishop, and then this knight has the time it needs to run away, and you don't win the piece that way. Whereas just taking the piece wins you a piece. After b5, white tried rook d1. So white's trying to complicate the position. Basically the equivalent of hitting the random button. Let's just keep attacking stuff. Let's, knight's en prise. I'm going to ignore both of those, and I'm going to attack the queen. It's kind of it's a bit of an art in chess to realize, oh, I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm going to randomize this position, and that's what he's done. He's tried to mess things up to try and to try and cause a mistake. So black has to be very careful here, and just taking this pawn here, I think is fine. The knight then took this pawn here, and the queen took back, and then that allows the knight to escape back to f3. However, white chose not to. White's determined to try and lift this rook over and try and get to this king. But unfortunately, there are back row checkmate problems that you have to deal with. I think maybe just retreating the knight and then maybe marching this pawn up the board and trying to rip open the king using the pawn as a battering ram might be a better chance of actually working. Because the idea is by marching this pawn up the board and using the battering ram, you're also creating an escape square for the king, so there's no back row mate problems anymore. Oops. So after rook d3 came queen c1 check, and the rook was forced to go back. And unfortunately, the queen on c1, well, unfortunately for white, was actually a queen fork attacking the king and the knight, and that was great. It just allowed black to take this knight. Now white's decided he's not swapping the queens off, which is good. Rook bc8, that's good, putting the rook on the open file, threatening to come in and do some, well, swap off more pieces, basically. With every swap off, black gets closer and closer to victory. So white now played computer lockup. That's an interesting move. Come on, where's my computer locked up? Ah, there we go. Okay, so queen f3, rook bc8, rook g1. Yeah, I mean, just about everything that white tries to do here is not going to work. But yeah, it's interesting. This is an interesting idea. I think just rook down to c1 would have been best here, just to get the swap off of rooks straight away. Queen c1's a little trap, hoping that white's eyes light up and he goes, oh wow, free queen, I'm back in the game, and gets a bit of a shock when this rook comes down here check. The queen has to pop in the way, and then the rook takes it with mate. The problem with queen c1 is white can just completely ignore it and play something like, h4 or something. And now the rook is threatening to win the queen, and the queen has to waste time moving again. And now there's no back row mate problems anymore. And this pawn can start charging up the board. An alternative way to play it is to play g4. I like h4 a little better because it guards g5 and it stops the queen from jumping onto this square here. That's why I suggested h4. And the idea is to follow up with g5, g4, g5, and try and batter this king down. Try and create a way for your queen to get in there and check this king. So queen f5 was played. Oops. Black then played rook c7, preparing to double, or yeah, it looks like preparing to double. The queen just dropped back to h3 now. Rook hop to c3, attacking the queen h5, and then queen e3. So I think black's just reorganized her pieces so she's ready to come down and trade for this rook. Okay, so rook f1 was played, and then rook c1. Well done to white. He's decided, I'm just defending that with my queen. I'm not gonna take it, obviously. Well, not that he could. It was really bad if he did. He's hanging in there. Rook takes, queen takes, rook c8. Uh-oh. I think this is game over now, because there's no way to stop this rook move. If the queen moves off the back, the rook move is going to lead to checkmate. If an escape square is created for the king, the rook simply pins the queen to the king. So h4 was played with the escape square idea, hoping for one free move so this queen can, maybe nab this pawn or something like that. But black didn't give him the free move. She played rook c1, and the queen is toast. So after takes, now black is just a whole queen up, and it's a really easy win. I won't say too much. I'll just quickly race through the rest of the game. So you just watch the queen mop up these pawns, and then this big pawn mass comes down with the queen working with them, and now there's a rook and a queen working together, and the game is just about over. There we go, checkmate. So interesting game, very well played by Black. Emily, great stuff. And yeah, I mean, not too much in the way of blunders there. It was really good. White found the great way to take advantage of the overworked piece, the overworked queen, to win a pawn. Unfortunately, White blundered the pawn back and gave himself a wrecked pawn structure at the same time. So some lessons to be learnt there. Um, uh, the main problem with White was these wasted moves. The knight went from f3 to g5, back to f3, and then later on back out to g5, and even after that, it ended up going back to f3 again. Eventually, it got taken on g5, which is kind of ironic. So White needs to eliminate those wasted moves from his play. These knight assaults, these one piece attacks, they don't actually achieve anything. You only do this sort of thing if you know for sure you're going to win something. Yeah, but not much wrong with White's play here. I love the knight move attacking the rook, and back here, once we got to this position here, finding the queen fork, grabbing the knight, and then the back row mate idea at the end, and then the pin winning the queen. Good stuff. Okay, I hope everyone learned something from that, and yeah, goodbye.